let us understand your syllabus. If you go through your you know economic syllabus, of course it is written like economy of India, social schemes, and etc. But that is a subject itself. Economics is a subject. But in that subject, there are so many topics, there are so many subtopics, there are so many chapters which you have to understand. So I'm just giving an outline as to what you will be expecting in the economics as a subject. That means, what are you going to learn in the economics subject? See, first, in today's class also, I'm going to take up some of the concepts. I will start the economics class. I will give you some outline of the economics as the introduction. So the first thing which you need to understand is the introduction to the economics, where in the introduction you will be understanding about uh, what is microeconomics, what is macroeconomics, what do you understand by microeconomics, why microeconomics is important. Then you will come to know about what is demand, what is supply, what is law of demand, what is law of supply, how demand and supply are important, and what is their relationship in between. Then we will talk about what is equilibrium position. Okay. We will also talk about what is elasticity of demand, elasticity of supply. These are very basic. These are also mentioned in your NCRTs. Then we will talk about what is GDP, gross domestic product, what is gross national product, what is let's say NDP, net domestic product, what is net national product, then how the GDP and GNP are related to each other. What is let's say nominal GDP, what is real GDP. So those things we will study about. That is your basic foundations, starting classes. Then we will talk about inflation. Many of you know what is inflation. Mehengai in Hindi, normally we talk about mehengai. When the price of anything goes up, we say that it is too much high, and that is the reason. There is a phenomenon called as inflation. So what is inflation? Why do inflation happens? And how to calculate inflation? Where we will talk about different types of index, like for example, wholesale price index, in the consumer price index, CPI and WPI. Then we will also understand the how to resolve the issue of inflation. What steps the government of India or the RBI together will take so that the problem of inflation can be reduced. That we will discuss in the inflation chapter. Very important. Then there is another chapter called as monetary policy. Okay. And there is another chapter called as fiscal policy. Not physical, fiscal, FISCAL, fiscal policy. In the monetary policy and fiscal policy, especially in the monetary policy, we will learn about what is the role of RBI, it is the Bank of India, and how RBI controls the money supply, because you know that RBI has authority to print currency. So the questions, small questions like, can RBI print currency as much as it wants? Or is there is some parameters, or is there some kind of rules and regulations as to how much currency the RBI can print? That we discussed in uh, the chapter of, let's say, monetary policy. Then we talk about, different types of tools. The inflation problem we have discussed briefly. I have just told you that what is inflation. But at the same time, in monetary policy, we will understand that how RBI or in which methods RBI tries to control the inflation. So, in which methods, in the sense, you will learn about, I'm sure that you might have heard about it. For example, CRR, okay, cash reserve ratio, bank rate, repo rate. Repo rate is more common in the newspaper. Sometimes you always read that, the RBI has reduced the repo rate by, a certain basis point. So you must have read the newspaper, either Hindu or Indian Express. Then you have like SLR, statutory liquidity ratio. Okay, those things we will study about it. Then there are certain things like bank reforms. that is a main topic. Bank reforms. What happens nowadays? You see that NPA, rise of NPA, non-performing assets. Okay, what is non-performing assets? Let's say somebody has taken a loan but is not paying back, and it's not like 1 lakh or 2 lakh or 1 crore or 2 crore. It's like thousands and thousands of crores of rupees. Many people, many people have taken money, but they are not repaying back on time. So when they are not repaying back, that automatically becomes NPA. There are certain rules. Today is not the class to discuss about those things, but I'm just giving an understanding that what RBI exactly does or what are the bank reforms has been done so that we can prevent this NPAs. Okay. And another one thing is that like bad loans, mounting of bad loans is important. What is Basel norms? Okay. And those things we will discuss in the monetary policy. Then moving on to the monetary policy form, then we will discuss about the fiscal policy. In the fiscal policy, what happens? There are two things most important. One is the tax, another one is the expenditure. You see, the tax is, what is tax and expenditure? Tax is a source of revenue for the government. How does the government make money? The government makes money. One way of making money is tax. There are some other ways, but primary way of making money is the tax. That means government imposes certain tax. Very different types of taxes are there. What are those taxes? We will discuss about it. Then in the expenditure also, that as the government of India or government of your state, for the development of the sector, for the development of the particular district or maybe the state or maybe the country as a whole, we need a lot of developmental works, like for example, infrastructure development, highway development, um, let's say ports development. Okay, let's say for example, some types of housing schemes, house for everyone. Let's say, for example, certain schemes like under the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan also that is going on. So government has to make certain expenditure. It is not like that government will make money by imposing the taxes. It is fine, but why government is making people to pay the tax? The reason is that once the government has money, so the money can be spent again once again for the welfare of the people. So those welfare activities are nothing but expenditure. Of course, when government will spend money, that will be the expenditure. So that there we will discuss about what are the different types of expenditure. What is developmental expenditure? What is non-developmental expenditure? Okay. There itself, then we will connect with the concepts of budget. So in the budget, before you understand the current affairs related to the budget numbers, mm, the most important part of the budget is also to understand like what is fiscal deficit, okay, what is revenue deficit, what is budget deficit, what is total deficit, what are the different types of accounts, like what is revenue account, what is current account, what is you have another account is known as capital account, that we have to understand. So once we complete all this, then slowly these are most static subjects. Okay, these are extremely conceptual concepts. So you have to have a very good hold over these particular chapters. Then we slowly go towards the dynamic topics, like for example, what is balance of payment? Okay. Uh, what are the different types of accounts of this country? Two types I have just told you, that one is current account, another one is capital account. Another type of account is like international reserves, where all of the foreign currencies they are reserved. Then you have like exchange rate. Like I'm sure that you must know that what is the exchange rate of rupee to dollar. It's like sometimes 70, sometimes 72, sometimes 68. It changes. Okay. So how does the change happens? Who changes? And what will be the impact of change? So those things we will discuss. So all these chapters which I have just talked about, these are more specific to your concepts. Okay, more specific to concepts, and these are economics specific chapters. Then when you go to the Indian economy, that means economy of India, then you start with like, for example, planning. I know that you are aware at least a brief understanding of economic planning. What are the different 5-year plans? Okay, what is first 5-year plan, second 5-year plan? What is Mahalanobis strategy? And what is inward-oriented policies? So those things you discuss in the 5-year plan. So 5-year plan has already gone up. Now there is no planning commission. It is being taken over by Niti Aayog. So we will also briefly discuss about what is the difference between planning commission and Niti Aayog. Then you try to understand the different chapters like Indian agriculture, Indian industries. You discuss about, let's say, Indian service sector. You know that service in India, service sector is performing and contributing to the GDP of country more than compared to the agriculture and the manufacturing sector. Okay. So why and how? So that we will discuss about it. Then you have, let's say, for example, unemployment, poverty. In India, there is a lot of poverty. How we can eradicate poverty? You have, let's say, Human Development Index. What is Human Development Index? What is gross happiness, which is calculated by Bhutan? Then, you know, then you have certain international organizations like IMF, World Bank. You talk about, let's say, for example, certain United Nations economic, specific rules and regulations or certain schemes. You discuss about it. And yeah, I think this is the complete outline of your economics syllabus. Okay? I have just told you that because when you read the mm, actual syllabus, it is not in detail mentioned, but when you dissect the syllabus in a more elaborate way, then there are so many chapters which you have to go through it. And as I'm telling you that there is a specific way of understanding economics. If you read like haphazard way, if you start from inflation, then you jump to planning, then you jump to IMF, then you come to, let's say, demand and supply, then you won't be able to enjoy the subject, neither you will understand the subject. So there is a specific way of understanding and approach towards the economics as a subject. First, you should clear your basic concepts, like all the chapters which I have talked about, specific to the economics. Then you go to the Indian economy slowly. Okay. Then you go to the international economics. International economics, you will talk about the what is globalization, what is let's say, for example, IMF role, what is World Bank role, etc. And that's what is European Union economic only, not the other political sectors, only economic point of view. Then you talk about the international related events. So that will be the much more understanding approach for your economics as a subject. So I'm once again repeating, first you have your understanding or basics very clear, starting from your, let's say, for example, concepts. Then you have, for example, the Indian economy part. Then you have the international economics, but very brief, not in detail of international economics. So that's it of your syllabus. Are you all clear about it? Do let me know if you have any question. You can use the chat box if you want to ask any question so far.
Clear, sir.
Yes, rest of the students, Nikita, Priyanka, Nilamadhav, Salvation, Yashvi.
Clear, sir.
Okay. Okay. And for the students, Salvation and Daisy and others, uh, I'll be sharing with you the syllabus in your WhatsApp group. And as well as you'll be getting in the email ID if you register. Now, let us start. So far, I have given you all the ideas related to economics. Today, I will just introduce the subject, as today is the first class of economics. I will introduce the subject. I will give you certain insights. Uh, I'm sure that you will enjoy this. See, I say always that economics is a way of life. Okay, what is economics? Is a way of life. Don't worry, I will explain that why I am telling you economics is a way of life. So the first thing that comes in my mind is to understand where to start the economics as a subject first. See, in the basics of economics, we will first understand two things. Number one, microeconomics. Number two, macroeconomics. Remember, I am sharing my screen. Okay. You see, there are two things. One is microeconomics, and the one is macro. Let me write down 1 second. Macroeconomics. Remember, microeconomics and macroeconomics. First, we will let ourselves very clear as to what is microeconomics, what is macroeconomics. First thing that comes in our mind, that microeconomics. See, in the microeconomics, we talk about individual. Okay, in the microeconomics, we talk about individual. And what do you mean by individual? Individual means, within quote, I repeat, individual can be one person, individual can be one entity, individual can be, let's say, one sector. It depends. So what is the individual? Here, individual means what happens at ground level. Okay, what happens at ground level? Let me explain one bit of more. See, microeconomics, when you talk about individual, let's say you talk about people, or you talk about, let's say, vendors, or you talk about, let's say, specific industry, let's say tea industry, or maybe agriculture and as processing industries. When you talk about microeconomics, you talk about these things within quote individual. So there, let's say, for example, when you study the microeconomics, you get to know that what is the economics aspects or economics fundamentals at individual level. Okay, what do you mean by economic fundamentals? That how people are doing. That means what is the quality of life? Okay, let's say what is per capita income? That means, let's say, how much money they earn, every individual, how much money every individual earn per day on an average. Okay, so how a specific industry, let's say, how does this food processing industries they do, how they are performing, how this automobile industries is performing. So you get to know very specific points and specific answers about this economic parameters or economic fundamentals when you study about microeconomics. Am I clear, all of you? Are you clear, all of you?
Yes, sir.
Rest of the people, are you clear? Just yes, raise your hand if you have understood, or tell me just yes in the chat box that you have understood this microeconomics. Very nice, very good. So this is micro. Micro means small things. So that means at individual level, we understand that how the economic fundamentals are happening with them. So what happens to the macro level? Macro means what? Micro means small or micro. Macro means bit of big. Here you study about how is the economic fundamentals, how is the economic fundamentals or how are economic fundamentals at larger level or larger, or maybe let's say country specific. For example, how the India is performing. Okay, how is India's economy? How is India's economy? That means what will you get? You will understand what is GDP of India and how GDP of India is doing comparatively, let's say GDP of China or GDP of US or GDP of UK. So you try to compare with different countries. With different countries. Then you get to know, okay, our country is performing good or bad or average. Then you try to understand from the macroeconomical fundamentals. And these are the GDP, GNP, okay, GNP. So these are nothing but macroeconomic fundamentals. That means how a country as a whole is performing, you try to understand here in the macroeconomic fundamentals. Now you see that then why we are understanding this microeconomics and macroeconomics too separately? Is there any correlation? Is there any correlation? Okay. Why we should read about this microeconomics and macroeconomics separately? Is there any correlation? You see that uh, there is a lot of correlation between these two, microeconomics and macroeconomics. Okay. And especially you talk about this correlation, when in a higher versions, when you talk about sector specific. Let me give you certain examples. You see that now in India, the population is more comparatively UK or US. Okay. So, of course, you know that we have limited resources. We have to always keep in our mind, what is economics? Economics is nothing but how to utilize or how do you decide, okay, with limited resources and unlimited wants. That means when you have less resources or when you have very limited resources, how do you decide how to use or where to use these limited resources? Because we can have maximum wants. We want these things, we want that one. We can imagine everything. We want everything, but we cannot get everything. Why? Because there is a limited resources. So similarly, in country, there is a limited resources. Limited resources can be different types. Money can be one resource. Human being, like human resources, another. Natural resources, another. So when you compare the limited resources and when you try to understand the limited resources, that too with, let's say, other countries like US and UK, comparatively, we are not in a less position. We also have a very good amount of limited resources, at least the natural resources and everything. But the problem, what is happening? In UK, the population is less. So whatever is resources available, that are more than sufficient. Okay. But in India, the resources are comparatively equal. However, due to more population, okay, due to more population, the resources is getting divided into small pieces. It's like this. If you have 4 members in your family, let's say you have baked a cake, there are 4 pieces. Okay. And the size of the cake is same. Let's say it's half kg cake. And there will be 4 pieces equally divided among 4 people. But just imagine if in that family there are 10 people, then what would happen? If there are 10 people, but the same half kg, half kilo cake, then what would happen? So you have to divide that cake equal pieces into 10 different equal pieces. So that means per piece would be less. Okay, comparatively earlier when there were only 4 people, per piece was more, but now when there are 10 people, per piece is less amount. So same thing, it is applicable in the economics also, especially when you talk about India. So due to population, more population, so the allocation of resources individually is less, and sometimes we call in a technical term like per capita income. Okay, and in the UK, US, and France, small countries, what happens? The allocation of resources to individual is more. Why? Because resources comparatively same, but population is less. That is one of the reason. I'm telling you, that is one of the reasons why we say those countries are more developed country. Why they are developed country? Because per person allocation of resources are getting high comparatively what we are expecting in India. Now, let's say, okay, let me ask you, are you clear about this concept, this comparison between these things? Just raise your hand or tell me yes if you have understood this concept. First thing first, topic, we have understood micro and macro. Now we will talk about what we will understand in microeconomics. See, in microeconomics, the first thing which we will understand, that is um, demand and supply. Okay, in the microeconomics, the first thing we will understand, one is demand and another one is supply. Let us try to have more understanding about what is the demand and what is supply. Now, if I may ask you a simple question, what do you mean by demand? Please feel free to answer. What do you mean by demand? Anybody who can answer. It's very simple. Every time we demand, what do you mean by demand? Yes. Salvation? Any answer do you have? Nilamada, Nikita, the rest of the people. What do you mean by demand?
So, demand is willingness of something we want.
Mhm. Okay. Anyways, if you are not able to, answer, let me answer this. See, many people they confuse the demand term with other terms. Like for example, some say demand is want, or some say demand is need. I need something. I want something. And is it demand? Let us understand whether the want and need are can be called as demand or not. Demand, more specifically, when we talk about, it has two aspects. Okay, I'm sharing my screen. It has two aspects. Number one aspect of demand is, let me write down here. Demand is the amount of quantity, is the amount of quantity that a consumer is willing and able to purchase. You can note down if you wish. What is demand? Demand means, demand is the amount of quantity that a consumer is willing and able to purchase. I'm repeating once again. What is demand? Demand is the amount of quantity that a consumer is willing and able to purchase. Please pay attention. What I'm trying to say here, two important things. One is willing, and the one is able. Okay, willing and able. What is demand? Demand is when if one person or consumer is willing and able to purchase. I'll come back to you. Okay. Now you see that when I say that demand is the amount of quantity. Why quantity? Because we always demand in quantity, isn't it? We need 1 or 2 or 3 or kg or liter. It is always a quantity. So that is how we demand. Then we have for that particular quantity, we pay some amount, isn't it? We pay some price. Let's say for 1 kg 20 rupees, or for let's say 50 rupees for 1 liter, or maybe some numbers for 2 numbers, 3 numbers, certain amount. That will change. That will change according to the product, according to the seller. That will depend. The most important thing at the two terms, that demand is able and willing to purchase. Who demands? We demand. Who are the consumers? We are the consumers. What do you mean by consumer? Consumer who consumes. What do you mean by consuming? Consuming means when you purchase something. Okay, when you purchase, what do? You spend money. Then you purchase. So demand means here that able to purchase and willing to purchase. Okay, let me give you a simple example. For example, let's say that my monthly income is 5,000 rupees. Okay, for example, my monthly income is only 5,000 rupees, and for that 5,000 rupees, let's say I want to purchase an iPhone. Can it be called a demand? My income is 5,000 rupees, but I want to purchase an iPhone. Can it be called as demand? Just send me yes or no in the chat box. Yes. Are you all active? Salvation? Niramadhab, Nikita? Understand. See, it cannot be called as a demand. Why? Because it doesn't satisfy the two criteria. And what are those two criteria? Two criteria are, number one criteria, that willingness to purchase. Yes, I am willing to purchase. I am willing to purchase an iPhone. But the question is, am I able to purchase? Answer is no. Why? Because my income is only 5,000 rupees. How can I purchase an iPhone which costs more than 1 lakh rupees? With an income of 5,000 rupees, how can I purchase one iPhone which costs more than 1 lakh rupees? So I am not able to purchase. So it won't be called as a demand. Getting my point? It is not called as a demand because it doesn't satisfy two criteria. Similarly, let's say there is a rich person, okay, who is let's say richest person of the country, who has a lot of money, and you try to sell 1,000 rupees product. The person is able to purchase, but the person is not willing to purchase. The person can pay it and is able to purchase, but the person is not willing to purchase. That is what you say is not demand. So when it is demand only when it satisfies these two criteria. Number one, that able to purchase and willing to purchase. Are you clear, all of you? Just tell me yes and raise your hand if you have understood the concept of demand. All of you, have you understood this concept? Okay. Okay, very nice, very nice. So I have just given you what is demand. Then let us understand another concept, law of demand. I am sharing my screen. You see, law of demand. Okay, what do you mean by law of demand? These are very basic and these are important. So when you talk about law of demand, when you demand, what do you demand? You demand certain quantity. And how do you get the quantity? By paying price. That means always there will be correlation between quantity and price. Okay, always there will be correlation between quantity and price. So what is law of demand? Why there is a law? Because somehow it is universally applicable. You see, what do you mean by law of demand? Very simple. Law of demand means, I'm just writing in a shortcut, that when price of a product, see, product can be different. Product can be tangible or it can be intangible. What is tangible? Let's say tangible means which you can touch. Intangible means, like for example, I am teaching you, it is intangible, you cannot touch it, but you can only feel it. Okay, you can see me, so it is like service. Tangible means a physical product is called as tangible. So product can be different. Okay, you shouldn't misunderstand that product means only tangible. It can be tangible as well as intangible. So when price of a product increases, okay, increases, quantity demanded of that product decreases. Okay, keeping other factors constant. Understand? Very important concept. What is law of demand? Law of demand says that when price of product increases, quantity demanded of that product decreases, keeping other factors constant. Remember, many people, they miss this particular statement, but this is the most important statement. Keeping other factors constant. That means there are certain factors that has to be constant. Okay, then only it will, this law of demand will be applicable. So if those other products or other factors which are not constant, then it will not follow law of demand. And if you want to know what are those other products, I will discuss separately about what are those other products, not now. So shortcut, if I try to understand that when the price increases, quantity demanded decreases, and vice versa. Vice versa means what? When the price decreases, quantity demanded increases. All of you are clear about definition? Just raise your hand or tell me yes if you have understood the definition. Then I'll give you an example also. Have you understood this definition? What is demand? What is law of demand? Okay. Okay. Now, as you have understood that what is law of demand, let me also talk about, give you an example. Okay, an example. The example is potato. Okay, potato. For example, I'm drawing a graph also. Here you have price in this axis. here you have quantity. Okay. Now, for example, this potato, let's say I think many of the states are in lockdown. So before lockdown, just give you an example, huh? Keep it as an example only. Let's say 1 kg of potato was, for example, 40 rupees. Okay, so before lockdown, 1 kg, 1 kg of potato is how much? 40 rupees. Okay, 1 kg is 40 rupees. Now after lockdown, what happened? Now after lockdown, what happened? Let's say 1 kg of potato has become double. That means 80 rupees. Okay, 1 kg of potato has become 80 rupees. See, assumption is that you have 40 rupees only. What is the assumption? Assumption is that you have 40 rupees only. Then how much quantity will you purchase? Repeating once again. Before the lockdown, 1 kg of potato was 40 rupees. 1 kg is 40 rupees. After lockdown, 1 kg of potato is 80 rupees now. But you have 40 rupees. So if it is 80 rupees, if it is, let's say 80 rupees, okay, if it is 80 rupees now, then how much quantity you can purchase? Because you have 40 rupees, so you can purchase only half kg.
Half
Half
kg.
kg.
Okay, you can purchase only half kg. Now you see that this is called as demand curve. Try to understand, very important. So what is law of demand? We have understood. Law of demand, we have understood that when price goes up, quantity demanded goes down. See, when the price of potato goes up from 40 to 80, then what happened to the quantity demanded? It came down from 1 kg to half kg. Repeating once again, this graph, very important, very basic, that when the price of the potato, it has increased from 40 to 80, then how much quantity you have purchased? Half kg. That means in the price increased, quantity demanded decreased, keeping other factors constant. Let me come to you.